Order, shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers in grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation podcast. I'm your host, Mike Morgan, and I am very excited for my next guest today. Today I'm speaking to Doug White, a U.S. Air Force veteran who was a security forces specialist and additionally had a career in law enforcement spanning 25 years as a deputy sheriff in Florida. Since retiring in 2023, Doug has become a mental health advocate for the first responder and veteran communities, sharing his own story and struggles in the published memoir, Hiding in Plain Sight, The Truth About Trauma, Service, and the Way Forward. He's also a podcast host with Tell This Story, where he shares important conversations with first responders and veterans. And to say he and I are in the same space is the understatement of the year. Doug, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Mike, man, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and share some time with your with the Resilient Warrior Nation, as it were. And I want to thank you first for not wearing your signature muscle shirt, because I don't even have one. I'm self-conscious about my shoulders. So thanks for wearing the Eddie Penny Unafraid shirt. Makes me feel better.
Absolutely.
About myself.
Eddie, this shirt will be worn. For those of you who don't know, my life was literally changed watching an episode of Sean Ryan show. He was interviewing a man named Eddie Penny. He was a Navy SEAL, Team 6 member, and Eddie was recounting the story of the Extortion 17 incident in which a Chinook was shot down in Afghanistan, killing all 17 SEALs and 21 additional personnel. It was I believe, at the time, was the largest loss of life in the SEAL community, and I believe still is. But Eddie also spoke about escorting his best friend Jason Workman's body back to his hometown. During his recounting of that story, I became visibly upset. And as I'm watching this, I'm simultaneously thinking about a call I had 5 years before of a 2-year-old son floating in a pool, beautiful girl named Dana Sikorsky. And I began crying like a baby. I just lost it. Subconsciously now I know what happened. I'm watching this absolute warrior cry. And it told me it was okay to do so because I was not capable of doing so prior to. And after doing so, I realized I had some sort of PTSD. A bunch of other calls started popping up. I mean, a lot of calls that I buried over the years. And Doug and I were speaking about PTSD, and I had misconceptions about it. I always thought that you had to see your brother or sister next to you get killed to sort of develop those symptoms. And mine was being in the most devastatingly intimate moments of other people's lives over and over and over and over for years. And once I realized I had PTSD, I knew I didn't want to live life with the way I felt then. Nothing suicidal, just I knew I had to get help. Realized that traditional therapy was not going to do it for me. There was no man or woman sitting behind a desk that I was going to speak to that could tell what I've done and what I've seen, and they were going to be able to help me. So I began focusing on plant-based medicines, which is what I'd seen prior, and additionally on a Sean Ryan show with these special forces operators coming back broken men from war, and decided it was for me. My wife and I went last year to a facility no longer in existence called Soul Quest Ayahuasca in Orlando, Florida, and I literally changed my life over the course of a weekend. So I started this podcast to pay it forward and do what was done for me for others. And when I bring on guests like Doug, that's exactly what I want to do, because someone's going to see Doug's story today. It's going to change or save their life. And that is all that I want to do from this point on. So, I apologize for interrupting. Just had to give that quick synopsis.
No, not at all. And I'm glad you did, because I watched and listened to that same exact episode when it was initially published, and it had the same impact on me, but my reaction to it was I had already had my break, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but it reaffirmed to me that the symptoms of PTS, these are things that cannot be compelled. These are things that we experience as human beings. It's a human condition more than anything else. And, even though our experiences may be different or experience adjacent, our bodies, they don't know the difference to that. They react in the same way. Our physiological and neurological impacts and responses are going to be the same. And so much so that I continue to listen to Sean. I've been listening to him for years. But having been in law enforcement as you are, there's a stigma that goes along with plant-based medicine. Oh, it's the devil. It's you can't do that stuff. It's bad. It's for abuse. Man, I'll tell you right now, listening to the Sean Ryan show and the guests that he's had on there, Sean's own story, people like Marcus and Amber Capone, stuff like that, man. I got to the point after I retired, as I told you before we started recording, I got darker after I retired than when I was working. And that's saying something.
Yeah.
So I got to a point where I was thinking to myself, stigma be damned. If this thing is going to help, that's what I need. And for me, I started looking into it. Where do you go? I don't want to go to Circle K and buy it from my neighborhood shaman.
No,
Not a good idea.
It's a very sacred medicine, number one.
Yes, and that's not something to mess around with.
No.
But I actually I was asked if I wanted to do a trial for ETMS therapy, the electromagnetic stimulation on the brain. And buddy, that worked very well for me.
Really?
So, oh yeah. So
Can you tell us about that? Because you're the first person I've ever had that's spoken about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's an episode on mine where I actually had the doctor that did everything. So in Florida, if you're a veteran or a first responder, there are now 6 clinics between Miami and Jacksonville. 1 in Orlando, 2 here in Tampa. They're basically all over the state that you can get to them. But the state of Florida came up with a grant for 2 years to pay for all veterans and all first responders who qualify. And by qualifying, say, I need help or I want help. Raise your hand. That's the barrier to entry, that and an ID card.
Nice.
All free. Now, this is something that could cost you between 10 and 30 grand for 20 treatments if you go anywhere else. The state is doing this for free. Senator Jay Collins and Representative Danny Alvarez here out of the Tampa, Hillsborough County area were part of the driving force of that. And they started November 1st. They opened their doors in all the clinics. And I was patient 1 here in Tampa. I got a phone call and they said, "You want to do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro, whatever."
And how long ago was this, Doug?
This was November 1st that I started.
2024?
2024, yes.
Okay. Oh,
So I went down there and they put the little helmet on your head. They do an EEG and they want to check out your brain waves. There's alpha, beta, gamma, all the waves. And what they're trying to do is reset your brain waves to its natural base rhythm, kind of like our heartbeat. We have our own sinus rhythm. When it gets out of whack, we start having problems. Same thing with your brain. And they want to calm down the hypervigilant waves, the anxiety waves. They want to calm those down and increase the alpha waves.
Okay.
And they do that by, 1, doing the EEG, seeing where the problems lie. And then they find your specific frequency, your specific brainwave, and they tailor a 20 treatment protocol specifically for you. And it's based on pulses, wattage, and all this other stuff. You go in, you sit down. After the doctor explains everything to you, you sit down and they place this magnet on your forehead. And you hear a series of clicks every 15 seconds for 20 minutes, or for 15 minutes. And it almost feels like, it feels like somebody's tapping you in the forehead.
Okay.
But you could feel it in the back of your sinuses, though, because it's electromagnetic. And what they're doing is they're sending a pulse at that frequency from your frontal cortex to the back and forward again, and it's retraining it to its normal sinus rhythm.
Really?
Yeah, it's amazing. It is non-invasive. It is painless. Of course, they ask you, hey, sleep hygiene, short your sleep, because that's what you're supposed to do anyway. Abstain from drugs and alcohol. Get 45 minutes of sunlight every day between 7 and 11. And they ask you about your sleep. So there's a battery of questions that you have to answer so they can get the anecdotal evidence along with a 10-day and a 20-day EEG to compare the medical notes that go along with it to make sure that it's working. And if not, they adjust. So it's not supposed to help with cognitive function, but as a side effect, it does, but it's not marketed for that. So
did you notice an increase in your cognitive function?
Oh, buddy. Everything that it's supposed to do anecdotally worked for me. So they'll say, when I met with the doctor, she looked at my EEG and she's like, "Yeah, you've been bashed in the head quite a bit." I was like, "What?" She said, "Have you ever lost consciousness?" Define consciousness. I was a bomb tech for 7 years.
Yeah.
Have I eaten my fair share of overpressure? Yes. I thought it was awesome. I was like, yeah, I'm picking pieces of door frame off my helmet and my face shield. So the closer you are, the cooler it was. No,
Yeah.
it's bad. But we went through the work, and so it helps with headaches. It helps with brain fog, cognition, sleep, your sleeping patterns, nightmares. It calms down hypervigilance, anxiety, and depression. Every one of those things. Also, it is marketed for in this particular company, ETMS Ohio and now ETMS Florida. They run clinics for substance abuse as well. And their, I don't want to say a clearance rate, that's comp talk, but their success rate, the efficacy of their programs are like 60 to 80%. People get
Wow.
off of dope and never go back, or stop using
That's
alcohol,
incredible.
abusing alcohol, and never go back. So after my second treatment, 2 days, I've not had a migraine, which I used to get weekly.
Really?
Yeah, I've had 2 nightmares, and which is not a big deal considering it's been 4 months, and considering every time I close my eyes, I have a nightmare. If I dreamt, it's a nightmare.
Wow.
And that's suggesting that my sleep was good enough to actually get to REM. Now my
Okay.
sleep is in the high 70s and high 80s on my Garmin. Regularly, no headaches, just the 2 nightmares, sleep through the night. And I've got the sleep apnea. I've got the low T, all the physiological things that go along
Yep.
with PTS and, the wear on our bodies after 30 years of service. I've experienced every one of them. And so when I started the ETMS therapy, I was on 6 different medications from the VA. I take fish oil now.
Nice.
I've
And you've only
titrated
done
off
2
it.
treatments.
No, I did all 20 from
Okay.
November to the first week in December. They want you
Okay.
5 days a week for 4 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's
And
pretty
after
intensive.
that, it's not a one and done. So if I feel like, hey, in June, I need to get a tune up, I go in there, they do an EEG, and they're like, yeah, we can modify or optimize you here. And you go through another series of whatever it is they prescribe, and all free. And the best
Nice.
part about it is they want your ID so they can show their company, yes, this is an actual first responder or a veteran.
Yep.
They don't need to know who you work for. They don't want your insurance information. They don't need anything. When you're captured and they're reporting back to the state so they can show their efficacy to the state so they can keep getting their money to fund for us, you're patient number 213. There's no way to tie any of that back to you.
That's
So,
amazing.
no, it's fantastic, man. It's safe, it's pill-free, it's non-invasive, it's non-painful, and it's wonderful. The whole staff there is just great.
Now, would I be eligible since I'm an out-of-state retiree and I live in Florida now, or is it just Florida residents?
If you live in Florida and if you're a retired first responder, active first responder, veteran, free.
Nice. Okay. I'm actually going to think about looking into that because every little bit helps. And I definitely have some cognitive decline
No,
over
I
the
did
years.
too. And I would find myself having to read the same, if I'm reading a book, I'd have to read the same paragraph 3 and 4 times. Now, no issues whatsoever.
Wow.
And no hypervigilance. But the cool thing about it is, and I was worried about this because I knew first responders were going to ask, hey, man, I've got to be sharp. And you and I talked about this. You've got to be paying attention to what's going on outside that patrol car.
Oh, yeah.
Is this going to dull my senses? And they're like, no, it's just going to make it on demand. Basically what they said is, and I agree with this, if you're always at a 9, overreacting and going to a 10 is your kid spilling milk on the floor. That's
All right.
You go into a rage. Now, once you're optimized and you go through this program, spilt milk just becomes spilt milk. And it's
amazing.
It is amazing because shit used to send me off the deep end because I was always just ready. Now,
Yeah.
no, bro, it's just spilt milk. No big deal.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
'cause
incredible.
I still have this anger thing periodically. Nothing crazy. It's like I'm trying to fight people, but I just have that quick reaction, man. Just saying something stupid to my wife. You're like, why'd you say that? When I should take that second, but I know I should, and I don't. Just something like that. Just for that one quality would interest me greatly.
Yeah, man, it's incredible. And I at first was like, yeah, bro, this is witchcraft. What kind of voodoo shit
Yeah.
is this? Whatever. Okay, it's free. Whatever. And they give you a snack afterwards. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm driving for the snacks.
Yeah,
But
right
it
there.
works. It works.
In and of
man.
itself, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
It's funny you're talking about stigmas because I remember I was at one ayahuasca retreat and it was for first responders and vets, and I was speaking to a Green Beret the day after, and he had changed his life the year before. He had been on 17 different medications. Just, you list the problems that we all know about, he
Hmm.
had them. And he drank that weekend, and that was it, done with all the meds. And I said, you know what's funny, brother? There's no stigma for them putting you on 17 medications. Yet if you and I speak to someone else about using ayahuasca, a plant medicine that's been used for thousands of years, they look at us with their heads cocked sideways like we're out of our minds, man. They have no problem with you taking antidepressants or SSRIs that'll dull you and make you a shell of the man that you are. But, using that stuff gets this reaction that we're out of our minds. I'm like, because everyone is so conditioned by these pharma companies.
Bro, it's so crazy you said that because in all of this, I mean, I've been on my healing journey for 5 years now, trying to sort this all out on my own. And I never thought about it from that perspective, ever. I was like, here's the VA starter kit. Okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah,
I never thought about the stigma attached with that. Now, I will say this, man. If you're in crisis and you need to,
absolutely. There's the time and a place.
there's a time and place
Yeah.
for medication. But I'd gotten to the point where, full transparency here, nothing worked. I didn't care about anything.
Yep.
And I was dead inside. I'm like, bro, there's no joy here. Like, oh, hey, you can't use these two together because it'll keep you awake. So take this one. This one
Yeah.
gives you nightmares. So take this one if you get nightmares. And by the way, ED is going to be a problem. So forget about any spontaneous intimacy with your spouse. You're going to need 30
Yep.
minutes. I'm like, dude, how am I living here?
Yeah.
It's either
Where did it
angry
end?
or staring off into space. I mean, there's no happy median.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, there's a lot of tools out there. Millions of veterans, 800,000 cops, more firefighters. And there's a different way or a different combination of ways to get yourself sorted out. And I will say this: the barrier to entry to getting help. Raise your
Yep.
hand. Raise your hand.
Exactly.
There's no requisite amount of calls that you need. You don't have to say, "Man, I've only been in one shooting. Do I really rate?" Yes, you do, because you said it with Taylor on episode one. The statistic: the average person has what, 3 to 4 traumatic events in their
Yeah, I
life.
think it's 2 to 3, but
Yeah,
3 to 4
and
regardless.
either way, responders, what, 700 over the course of a career.
Yeah.
Now you got to think there's 800,000 cops, roughly 18,000 law enforcement organizations. I think what 50% of those are under 100 people, and like 80% of those are under 50 people. I mean, there are not big mega agencies like NYPD or the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, Broward, DC Metro, LAP. They're not all of them are big like that.
No.
So if you have a 10-person department and then you have LAPD or NYPD, that's 700 to 800. I mean, this person here could have, like you said, thousands, where this person here has 20. That's
Yeah.
an average. And like you said with Taylor, man, yeah, bro, when you come out of the gate, your first day as a rookie, and you get 2 homicides, you may want to start taking a look into that shit. But when we started, there was no discussion about this, man.
No.
Are you
No.
kidding me?
The one discussion was that first night out of the academy. I was working at midnight. First homicide was an hour in. So we started 11 p, 12 a.m. first homicide, second homicide 4 a.m. A buddy of mine who was getting trained by another FTO, so we're at the second scene together. I look at him, and I was not naive by any means, but I'm like, O'Neill, what the fuck did we just get ourselves into, man? Holy shit, this is 5 hours, bro. I'm at 2 homicides, and it just got crazier from there. Be honest with you, I love the action,
Yeah.
but you realize, I realized after my career, looking back, like, man, that was not normal. And I'll
No.
tell you one thing that I did not realize until I began this healing journey was we go into these careers and we love these things that are not normal. Everyone's running from, we're running towards, and we love it, man. Most of us are adrenaline junkies, but something had to light a fire in us to kind of, I don't know, pique our interest or get us in these careers. And I didn't realize it as I was going through, because I never really spoke to guys at length about this, but I had a very poor relationship with my father. And I think that's when my fire started. And I ask guys now because I think it's super, super, super important if guys did not. And it's a very, very common denominator that they have not had good relationships that they need to heal at some point, just not blow it off like it's nothing. How was yours growing up with your dad?
My parents are still married to this day. and 54 years this June. So
Great.
my dad, from a different generation, man, he's 82.
Yeah.
The guy broke his back. Okay, give you an example of who this guy is. Broke his back in two places. Didn't paralyze him or anything, just had a lot of pain. Couldn't get around. 6 weeks later, he can't get off the toilet one morning and says, I probably need some help. Now he's had his spine fused and all this. This was September. And I'm like, Dad, you said you hurt your back 6 weeks prior. I mean, it's just, dude, woodpecker lips. These people are like the hardest generation ever. And I don't understand it. But my dad, from that generation, mom took care of the kids. Dad made the money, did the discipline, and, directed the strategy of the family movement or whatever. They were the CEO, but not really. Mom was. Then mom went off to work, but dad always had his thing. He was always driving towards being better in business, being better in the community. They were very service oriented. So the Shriners, Masonry, Freemasonry, the Shatoma Club, the Elks, they were always doing and donating and giving and serving. So my dad and I, that's something that I need to unravel because I know that it bled over into my relationship with my kids. And, I believe that my dad did the best that he could with what he had and what he knew. And, I did the same. And now that I look back on it, I know that I could have done better. But as far as being a provider and guiding the family, my dad did a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. He and my mom showed me what longevity in a marriage looked like, what a partnership looks like, the us against the world attitude in their marriage and their household. My sister's very well adjusted. My problems didn't stem from my childhood that I've recognized anyway, and I probably should do a deeper dive on that from my parents' end. But I think always seeking approval from one's dad is a big thing.
Yeah.
And if dad's not there, you may never connect that. So I think peer approval and approval or pride from my dad probably had a lot to do with me driving the way that I did. But I know that when I went to serve, very patriotic household. My dad served in the Army in the 60s.
Okay.
Everything I did was, my time with dad was watching old black and white war movies. The World War II stuff, Black Sheep Squadron in the 70s. You're a little bit older than I am, so I'm sure you remember, the Dukes of Hazzard and Black Sheep Squadron and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The originals, the good stuff. But, that was our time together. I remember, he used to tell me when I was a kid, if you look good, you work good. And he would break out all of his shoes for work, all of his nice, wingtips and all the stuff that the old guys wear. And we would sit in the living room for a couple of hours, and he'd teach me how to shine shoes.
Oh, yeah.
And I would shine shoes with him just because he was getting ready for the week.
Yeah.
And that carried over because, if you look good, you work good, you feel good. So, I had the shiniest boots on my platoon. Through my military career, through my sheriff's office career, my boots can't be beat. Every night they get 5 minutes. But, just little things like that. But what drove my fire to serve and to go into law enforcement, I think it was just a deep desire to serve, and I hate bullies. I can't stand bullies. Yep. I was bullied as a kid, and nothing that is going to drive me to write a manifesto or some crazy shit like that. But it was enough to say, hey, this isn't right, man. And once I finally grew into my body, I could stop other people from doing it too.
Yep.
So that's really, I think, where it went for me. Yeah.
Amongst us. So we kind of bypassed. Just tell us where you grew up, how your family life was.
Well, I grew up in Tampa, Florida. I was born in Bradenton, actually, just over the Skyway Bridge, a little pink hospital at the time, Manatee Memorial. We lived there for 6 months, and my dad was a salesman, sold lumber and building supplies.
Okay.
And since he was a salesman, we traveled for his work. So we ended up in Memphis for the first 6 years of my life and then settled back in here in Tampa. Grew up in Tampa for the most part, went to high school here, joined the military, went into the Air Force in 93. What I thought was going to be a 4-year thing turned out to be 14 and a half years. And
really?
You know, I
Best
valued my
laid plans.
service. Yeah, yeah. No, and it was the best thing that could have happened for me for every reason. But when I got off of active duty after my first 4 years, I came back home to work for the sheriff's office. And that was plan A. There was no plan B. I didn't know
Yep.
how I was going to make it happen. I applied to one agency, and that was the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. That was it. And
How big is that agency?
4,400 employees, I think.
Oh, so it's a nice size.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's at the time it was when I retired. At the time, it was the 12th largest in the country.
Yeah, that is.
So yeah, man, we did the jails, did the courts, all of that stuff. We have the regional SWAT team, regional bomb team, all of the things that you're supposed to have with a $660 million budget.
Nice.
So yeah, no, we've got all the
Monsters.
toys. It's a fantastic organization. It really is. I really enjoyed my time there. But back to growing up, man, it was Tampa. I played football for a little bit in high school. I wrestled, did track, swam all 3 years in high school. Had buddies and, the basic American middle class dream. That was pretty much
Nice.
it.
Okay.
Nothing
And then why'd you
spectacular.
choose? Fortunately and unfortunately, I guess. Why'd you choose Air Force as the branch to go into?
It's in the book, but excuse me. So my dad was Army. He was a paratrooper, 101st Airborne from 62 to 65.
Okay.
And so I wanted to serve. It was all about the Marine Corps because of the uniform. And but I was like, yeah, no, I don't really want that, the whole Full Metal Jacket thing, but whatever.
Yeah.
So I went to the Army recruiters because my dad was Army. I'd heard all the stories, and that was it. I wanted my GI Joe adventure. So I sat down with the Army and told them everything that I wanted to do, and they're like, okay, we're going to do MP because you want to be in law enforcement, but we're going to send you airborne and give you a Ranger option too in case you want to be a Ranger. Now, bro, at 18 years old, I wasn't sure that was a thing. At 51, having served, I know that's not a thing. So I would have been really, really pissed. But I went home and told my dad, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this and, tank paratrooper and blah, 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 blah. Just talking shit like a teenage kid that doesn't know what they're doing. And my dad said, son, every day since 1965, I get a phone call from several people every day saying they want to pay me good money to jump out of planes and kill people. And I was like, for real? So subtlety was not Dad's strong point.
Yeah.
I wasn't real quick on sarcasm at the time, but I realized, if I was going to do the military thing and not the college thing initially, that I needed to make sure that I was getting a trade or a skill or some type of education that would translate if I didn't make it a 20 or 30-year career.
Right.
So I went to go see the Air Force. It's like, maybe they're not going to lie to me. They're recruiters, man. Come on. So,
Yeah, exactly.
I went in and saw my recruiter who prior to recruiting duty was an air traffic controller. And I told him, I was like, dude, I want to jump out of planes. I want to do, great stuff. I want my G.I. Joe adventure. So he told me about combat control. He's like, oh, you can be a combat controller. I didn't know what that was, but I was all in, man. He showed me the VHS tapes and the recruiting posters and all this, gave them to me. So I took them home, had them all over my walls. And bro, I knew the Scarlet Beret was going to be mine. That's what I'm going to do. I was going to have my adventure. So I started PTing. I got prepared for it. Went down to the base and went through the screening for it. I was a swimmer, so I killed the swim. The swim was the easiest part. Everything else was wonderful, man. I was qualified, ready to go, and I went down to take the eye exam, and it turns out I have no depth perception and low light.
Yeah.
You kind of need that to call in airstrikes or land planes.
Exactly. Minor details.
Yeah, just little stuff. And so I was like, what other cool jobs can I have? So I was like, okay, well, there's, helicopter crew chief. They get to use miniguns. Cool. B-52 tail gunner. That sounds pretty rock and roll.
Yeah.
Even though we have air
absolutely.
superiority, what the hell am I going to shoot at? There's somebody following me.
Birds.
Yeah. So I looked into explosive ordnance disposal, EOD, because I knew I'd be able to do that at larger agencies, and I'd always had an interest in that. And I looked at security police at the time, which is now security forces. And I was like, you know what,
Okay.
that's what I need to do, because I learned the anti-terrorism aspect of it. I learned the law enforcement aspect of it. And they'll train me, employ me, and feed me for 4 years. So let's do that. And After a couple of twists and turns, I signed the contract and left a couple of days after. Well, graduated high school, middle story in there, blah, blah, blah. I went back to the MEP station, signed off on the paperwork, and they're like, okay, you're going to be shipping in 48 hours notice.
Damn.
So go home and start packing. And I had a class date, and then the following week I was gone, man. So
That's
and
crazy.
started my adventure that, like I said, was supposed to last 4, but lasted 14 and a half. So
Amazing.
yeah, it was pretty awesome.
And so this was what, 93 to '07 now?
Yes, 93 to 97 was my active time. Then I went active reserve, still doing my weekends and all that stuff, long orders. When I separated, I went to the Panhandle up to Herbert Field, and then I got a spot in December of 97 here at Special Operations Command out of MacDill. And I
Okay.
spent my last just right at 10 years at SOCOM here. So yes, altogether 97 to '07, but I went to work for the sheriff's office full time in 98.
Okay. Gotcha.
So there's
And
the
then,
overlap there.
right. So you're doing the and then we'll touch base with I know I'd heard the story about 9/11. So as you start your law enforcement career, was it everything you thought? Well, as you're a pretty young man at this point, what are you thinking?
I was 23 and a half when I started it all, man. I was, bro, I was ready to go.
Yeah.
I was ready to go. I had 4
Just a
years of
minute ago.
experience of doing law enforcement operations. Of course, being on a base, 99% of the time you show up in base housing at a call, they already know they're screwed because you're standing there. So there's really no arguments. And you get all of the stuff that you see on the outside, not a lot of the violence, but it's a microcosm of society. So you see little bits and pieces of here. So I had a vague idea of what I was going to
Right.
be getting into. I was the chief at traffic stops because that's all there is to do on base, really. When I got out here, man, it was a whole different world. The day before I started my first day, two Tampa police officers and a Florida state trooper, a Florida highway patrolman, were murdered in the same call.
Wow.
So when I showed up to roll call the very next day, I met the sergeant, happy, bright, shiny, and new,
Yep.
and he handed me a morning band to put over my star. And I was like,
What a
bro,
way to start.
yeah, yeah. And it was, I knew the prestige of the job and what I was doing and what my mission and my purpose was. I didn't realize until so many years later that that was going to be the heaviest piece of metal that I ever carried. And I valued my career and my service. I really did. I know I made a difference in a lot of people's lives. And being asked the question, everything that I've experienced and everything, the growth that I have now, would I do it again? In a heartbeat.
Hmm.
There's not even a conversation about this.
Yeah, say the same thing.
I would do it from a position of experience,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
from what I know now, and I would do it a lot better. And yeah, man, yeah, I valued my career. It was everything that I thought it was going to be. Yeah, yeah. I mean, in
Yeah, it's
1998, as you know, it's a whole different world of policing then than it is now.
oh, absolutely.
And if you wanted to be, respected, if you wanted to be among the meat eaters, you had to be a meat eater.
Yep.
If you don't want to be eaten,
Dog
don't
eat
act like
dog
food.
world out there. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you've got to look the part. Your physical appearance when you show up on
Command
the scene,
presence.
you got to be
Yeah.
business. And if you don't, not only are the bad guys going to chew you up, but your coworkers are going to chew you up. And you had to have aggression on demand. You had
Yep.
to be able to dole out violence when it was necessary, and dial back to empathy if the situation called for it. You had to be master of everything. And if you didn't, you weren't going to do well. So
No.
I'm grateful that they were harder times. Back in my day, it snowed every day. Not that shit, but it was a very different world. And I'm glad to have had that experience.
Yeah, I agree. No, people don't really comprehend who've never been on the street how the street works, and yeah, the streets will eat you up. Um, these one thing about these perps, man, is they look in your eyes and they smell fear. And if you're that fear dude, it's over, man. I mean, you have to establish that reputation quick. I remember my first straight up fight. We were with detectives. We were like 6 months in, and myself, my partner, they asked us to work with them one night. We were all pumped. Sergeant let us go plain clothes, and we go out to investigate this dope spot. We end up talking to these guys, and they kind of surrounded us. It was nothing untoward. We just the way the positioning unfolded. They actually knew most of them, and so we weren't seen by this Jeep that rolls up, thinking it's all their boys. Now, unbeknownst to me, it's the main shot caller that's in the passenger seat, and he's just checking up on his guys. So we walk out of this crowd, and I walk up to the driver's seat. I flash my flashlight, and he's wearing a Carhartt jacket. I can see the butt of a gun in there, so I open it up, snatch it up, tell him to get out of the car. Now, had I had some more time on, I would have just grabbed his wrist, take him right down to the ground. But I told him to get out of the car. I don't know why my partner got in between he and I, and he would just elbow my partner in the face, took off. So he's running, makes a right turn, slips on gravel, falls. I catch up, he squares off of me. I'm like, all right. And it's funny because your first real fight, you're not sure, you know the force continuum, but you're not really sure what level to use. You know it's going down. But I remember he threw a left. I blocked him my right. I had my flashlight in. I came over. I ain't gonna lie. Tried to break his left collarbone. I went a little over. So he's like, oh, I just movie time on the head, knee to the face, popped that grape. That was it. Found out later he is the baddest dude around. I don't know how many bodies. Definite serial killer. No one would ever testify against him. Um, Funniest part of the story was a couple of months later, I got a federal probation ratification hearing for him. So I go and I'm testifying in court, and the attorneys asked for a sidebar. So it's the two attorneys and the judge speaking, and I'm kind of looking around the room, and all of a sudden our eyes catch, and he's staring me down, and then we just, literally, he's basically eye fucking me, and I meant to mouth the words, but I said out loud, "Fuck you."
I love it.
The judge snapped her head to me. I'm like, "I apologize, Your Honor." She must have got whiplash. The prosecutor was like, and it was, I never heard a word about it again, but it was so funny. I'm like, damn, dude. I wish he was recorded because he was hysterical, but yeah, he was a bad, bad dude. And, I didn't realize it, but all of a sudden, like, months go by and guys are talking about you, like, yo, man, they heard me talk, so they gave me the nickname New York. Shocker. I don't know where to come up with that one. But they're like, yo, that's a bad motherfucker, this and that. And it's cool because you have that cemented in place. So now I'm not necessarily saying they're going to spread, like the Red Sea when you're walking around, but they will respect you,
No,
as you
it's
know.
true, man. The first time, it's like dealing with a bully.
Yep.
You have to set those boundaries, and sometimes these children are looking for boundaries. And before I started promoting, actually just before I made sergeant, I grew my hair out to where you see it is now. But before that, I had a high and tight. People thought I was bald because I had my hair cut like yours, just a little bit more on top, and the peaked eyebrows and being younger and bigger and more shape, and pretty aggressive. In fact, my father-in-law, the first time he met me, called my wife the next day, then girlfriend, and said, he's very intimidating. And I said, well, your father's insecurities are not my problem. So that's just who I was. That was
Yeah.
old Doug and how I did business. But I had these black leather Kevlar lined gloves that I wore anytime I thought I'd touch somebody, which was 90% of the time. It got to the point where I would show up at bar fights and get out of my car with the gloves on, and things would stop. And I'm going to say this, and I'm actually proud of this, but some people may like, well, then you've never been in a fight. In my entire law enforcement career, while on duty and working, in my entire life actually, other than inside training, I have never been touched, punched, pushed, or kicked by anyone looking to do me harm. Now in training, when you're doing red man, yeah, you work each other over. But somebody who is really intentionally trying to kill me, never touched me. Ever.
Yeah.
And it's because it goes back to command presence. Look like you're there to do business. And I've come up and people are laughing, and I'd take my sunglasses off and said, you're mistaken. I'm here to take your fucking teeth out of your head. What? You can't say that to me? I sure can. And it's funny because some of the guys that used to work with me and for me, it's like, how come you say shit like that? You never get complained on, but I say something and I get complained on. I'm like, because you smile. So, dude, it's about presence. If you tell somebody you're coming in their house at 3 a.m. and you're taking their kids and taking them to jail, you better show up at 3 a.m. and do it. Don't tell people you're going to do some shit and not do it, because you lose credibility.
Tell my rookies that, man. Exactly.
And when you're dealing with some of these folks out here, and again, I should probably say this to make it not seem like I'm a lunatic, but There are people out there that have contact with law enforcement that simply did something silly. They got caught. They got caught short. They're not bad people. But there are people in this world that our cars can drive to their trailers, apartments, homes, or their campsites without us driving them. We've been there so many times. And that's 99% of the people that we deal with. They know who they're dealing with. They know the games. They know what to do. They know the line that they can push before they get their face pushed in.
Yeah.
And they'll dance on that line. So, you know, sometimes people only understand curt words and violence. You have to be capable of holding the hand of a mother that you just told that their child's not coming home. And you have to be able to dial up that aggression to smash somebody's face in if they're trying to kill you.
Yeah, it's the truth.
And then
you must be comfortable with extreme violence.
And then 30 minutes later, you had to be at your kid's dance recital as dad.
Yep.
So it's one of the things you and Taylor talked about. I was like, you know, and I've said this so many times, but there's this cross reference between first responders and combat vets and special operators. We're like, oh, bro, those guys are so awesome, and there's this, but they're having the same conversations about us.
Oh yeah.
They see the things about us that we don't see. You know, you do this for 10, 20, or 30 years, and they may pull 45 ops in 90 days. But if we're working 90 days, we're handling 10, 12, 15 calls a day for 90 days. Then we have whatever your commute is on the way home to switch all that off and figure out how you're going to show up for your family.
Yep.
That's a hard thing to do, man. And to live like that for 10, 20, 30 years, yeah, it's a tall order.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's almost like hit a switch to be a beast for 8 hours, and when that 8 hours is off, you just click that switch again. Now you're back to Mike. Like, it's not that easy sometimes.
No, it's not. It's not.
So, yeah. So, can you tell us? I heard you on another podcast speaking about 9/11. Can you kind of tell us your experience? You know, where were you when you first heard about it? Number one, and then just kind of tell us from there.
I was working for the sheriff's office. I was on the afternoon shift, so we worked 1-to-1. I slept in that day, and my mom actually called me and said, "Turn on the TV. A plane hit the World Trade Center." And when I turned on the TV, I see the debris as everybody else did, and I thought, okay, maybe it was pilot error or whatever. Then you start hearing everything else like, okay, one, maybe, two, no way, this is terrorism, and being in the household that I grew up in, my parents were very well aware of the world politics, things going on. So I was well aware of the Middle East in the late 70s and 80s. I knew that they hated us over there. I knew that these things, I was aware of Afghanistan and all of this stuff. I'd always paid attention to that stuff. I found it interesting, oddly enough. As a middle schooler, I knew what was going on in Libya.
You don't see too many middle schoolers talking about Libya.
No, but it was always on the news in my house, and Gaddafi and this and that, and so I paid attention to that stuff, and of course watching the old black and white war movies and action movies and stuff. So my Air Force time, being a security forces or a security specialist, you concentrate on nuclear security and counterterrorism. So we have case studies of terrorist events and things that we need to do to mitigate the effects of a terrorist attack. So I was well aware that terrorism exists. That's the point I'm trying to make. And for me, 9/11 wasn't, oh my God, how could this happen? It was, okay, well, we knew this was going to happen, because we'd already had, World Trade Center 93. We had Khobar Towers in 95 or 96. We had the USS Cole. We had the embassies in Dar es Salaam and Nairobi. These were practice runs. These were heat runs for 9/11. So when it happened, I knew what was going on, and before the first tower came down, the base called me and said, "We'll see you tomorrow morning." I said, "Check, see you then." So I went to work my last shift at the sheriff's office for I didn't know how long, and told my sergeant, "Hey, I'm being recalled to active duty as of 9:30 this morning, and I'm leaving tomorrow." And she said, "Cool, we got you." And I showed up to the base at the command the next morning at 5, and volunteered right out the gate for 6 months because we didn't know what we didn't know at the time. So we knew that there were going to be strikes. It was going to be retribution. We didn't know, of course, that it was going to be a 20-year protracted war. But we knew nobody was going anywhere anytime soon. So we figured 6 months would be a good idea to get a grip on everything. So I volunteered to go back to active duty for 6 months, and by December 1st, they had us for a full year. And then I volunteered again and again. So went back on active duty voluntarily on 9/11 for 37 months and 18 days. And came back to the sheriff's office in mid-November of of 04, and picked up right back where I left off.
Okay. How was your time during that 9/11 deployment? Were you in New York?
No, I was assigned here at Special Operations Command at MacDill.
Okay.
And initially, because we were concerned about attacks, we knew that MacDill has Central Command, has Special Operations Command, has several major commands there that ended up prosecuting the war on terror. So everything, for the most part, if it didn't come from the Pentagon, it was done at MacDill.
Oh, okay.
So we knew that we were a target. We knew that our bosses were a target. So we concentrated on physical security and anti-terrorism there at the command. Shortly, that ramped up because then Secretary Rumsfeld says that all combatant commanders, basically all 4 stars, are going to have a protective security detachment. So we were quickly mustered together. Some of us were selected from the Joint Service Guard Force, and then we had special operators that were coming in as liaison officers from the Tier 1 places to not augment us, we augmented them. So they came in, and we stood up the command's detail. I was one of the 10 original plank owners of the detail. And basically knuckle dragging bullet catchers for the generals and admirals that cycled through over the next 10 years.
That's great.
I will say this, again, I was not an operator. My teammates were.
Yep.
So I know their culture well enough. I know who they are. I've learned more about them since I became vocal about my journey over the last 4 or 5 months than I have in the previous 24 years. I'm still in contact. I mean, just had coffee with one of them last week.
Yep.
And I will say this, that the special operators that I dealt with, I had the distinct privilege to serve with and for some of the greatest men and women, the most professional and adept war fighters that this planet will ever know. Mm-hmm. And it was the honor of my life. I mean, that 37 months post 9/11, of my 14 and a half years, that was the most formative of my time, to learn about leadership, warriorship, being a teammate, being depended on to get the job done, irrespective of rank or standing.
Right.
I learned a lot, lessons that I carried with me, and it was, Taylor talked about chasing the tail of the dragon. When I left the command in November of 04, I went right back to the sheriff's office, and I drove harder and faster than any of my peers. I mean, I set a bar that most of the time I couldn't match. And I had to prove still that I deserved the company that I kept. And I'm very grateful for those men and women that poured into me over those years. It can never be repaid.
Yeah, it's great, the inspiration they give. It's amazing when you're working with guys and girls like that, man. Just the levels that you see that I don't want to say so far above you, but levels that are very impressive, to say the least. And you just can give nothing but respect to these men and women.
Yeah.
So did it spur you to kind of do something different in the police department, or aspire to something different?
It did. Again, when you're dealing with folks like that, it's a whole different level. And again, growing up, patriotic household, being our age, I had all the G.I. Joe action figures and all that stuff. And, I knew what an AK-47 was because of the file cards on the back of the G.I. Joe boxes and all that stuff. So very well aware of all that stuff. And I knew that I wanted to serve. And when I did go to serve, there's a whole explanation that goes along with this, but I broke my ankle during PT.
Okay.
And, I didn't go see the doc right away. That caused a problem because it was purple like a balloon. Then they x-rayed it and said, yeah, your ankle's broken and you ruptured 2 ligaments. So I was like, yeah, no cast, walking boot. I'm good. 6 weeks later, they're like, yeah, dude, this isn't healing. You're going to need surgery. So trying to rub some dirt on it and press on, only doing more damage to myself. Mm-hmm. I spent the next year in and out of surgeries and casts trying to fix what I had done during a game of Zubal, just playing basically rugby on a basketball court with a bunch of operators. And there was a torn ACL, a concussion, and my broken ankle that day. So yeah, we played rough, and we
Yeah, exactly.
drank a lot too. But drinking had nothing to do with the injuries. But yeah, I was broken when my mates finally got to go down range and support the Boston Theater, and because of that, I was stuck back at home with the cast doing country clearances and answering the phone when they called back.
Right.
So my opportunity to test my mettle and to prove that I deserved the company that I was keeping, I was wearing a cast.
Yep.
So filled with shame, guilt, imposter syndrome, and all of the things that come along with letting your mates down, I experienced. I couldn't face them. And when my orders ended, I should have and could have continued. I could have stayed on active duty until I retired. The sheriff's office was cool with it. They understood there was a war, and I could have seen it out till 2013, and nobody would have batted an eye. But I left, like an eviction in the middle of the night. It wasn't, hey, my orders are done, guys. Let's have a party. Let's go to drink. No, I just faded away. And over the next 3 years, I would come back and do my minimum mandatory, the show up on the weekends and the 2 weekends, or, the 2 weeks a year. But before that, before I even went active duty on 9/11, I was doing 179-day orders plus the minimum mandatory. So on my days off from the sheriff's office, I was at the command.
Right.
I didn't have days off. I was always serving. But after that, I couldn't face the guys. And I walked away in shame. And I was
That's all due to the ankle injury?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's amazing how hard we are on ourselves, man.
Oh, brother, nobody is going to beat me up like I do.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Not even close.
I'll put something together for you. You'll be like, man, this is perfect. I'm like, God, he didn't see where I messed up that comma. It's all shit because of a comma. And I'll beat myself up over it. I don't do that anymore because I realize it's wholly unhealthy.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I saw my entire military career as a shameful disaster.
Wow.
Because when my mates needed me the most and the time for me to do my share of the task, I had an ankle injury because I decided to run over a sailor trying to make a basket. For what? That's how my war ended. And clarification, I didn't want to go to war because I wanted to go to war. I wanted to be there to support my mates when they needed me most.
Yeah.
That's it. And I wasn't. So when I got back to the sheriff's office, brother, I set the world on fire. I tried out for the bomb squad, made the bomb squad first tryout. I spent 7 years on the team.
You guys don't have to be SWAT operators to then go to the bomb squad, huh? Because my department's the Atlanta Police Department, Suffolk County. All bomb techs were SWAT guys who then went to become bomb techs.
No.
It's the first time I'd heard a story where just a straight up bomb tech. I didn't know they had
straight
that.
up bomb tech. Went to the school, everything. I mean, we were busy. We were the regional team for 9 counties, so unincorporated counties in Central Florida we handled.
Okay.
And we were was a level one bomb team. So we had all the vehicles, all the containment vessels, we had all the robots, we had it all. And we were averaging about 260 activations a year. So we were very busy. Suspicious package, white powder calls, pipe bombs, stuff like that. So I've done the long walk. I've done the demo. I've prosecuted bomb cases, disrupted, hand entry, the whole deal, live devices, hoax devices, all of it. My hearing sucks, but I have my eyebrows and fingers. So
that's all that counts. Bro, I used to watch you guys, and it was just like looking at goalies. I'm like, why the fuck would you ever want to do that? Putting on that suit in and of itself, man.
No, it's
God
awesome.
bless you, bro.
It's awesome because, the SWAT operators are like, oh, we're so awesome. Okay, well, if I had 6 of my buddies with machine guns at 3 a.m. while people are sleeping, anybody can be tough. But there's nobody around you for 300 feet in all directions, and it's just you, your thoughts, and something that somebody potentially left to kill you.
Exactly. Not many guys can throw shit to SWAT guys, but
Exactly.
That's great.
So, I joined the bomb squad, and as soon as I got back, I went right back to FTO, and everything was the job, that identity. I overinvested, I over-identified. all my self-worth came from what people thought about me professionally. The more things I could do, the more things I could take on, the better I was, and the more useful I was. I was bringing value. So because I was bringing value to someone else, that made me valuable. Didn't translate well to family or personal life. And so, yeah, man, I ran hard. I ran fast. I went to the training division for a while, came back to the street, and my sergeant says, hey, what are your goals for this year? And I was on an afternoon field training squad. It was the most aggressive and active squad in the entire district. And I looked at him straight in the face and said, I'm going to lead your squad in all stats across the board for the next 12 consecutive months. And he said, Doug, do you understand what you're saying? I said, yeah. I did it for 13 months while still going to bomb call-outs and training recruits. There was a couple of months actually that my stats were more than an entire squad's stats. I was killing it, bro. Killing it.
Yep.
Nobody could touch me. Yeah, man. And it was all to, and in retrospect and healing, it was all collecting, the carrots on the end of the stick to prove that I could have done what I was supposed to do, that I deserved their company. And to fill that hole that I didn't fill then.
Right. As you're doing this, how, from your perspective, looking back now, how was it to work with you from the guys that are working with you? Were you a guy that they wanted, or were you?
Yeah.
All right.
I was loved. Leadership came easy to me because it was, what's the right thing to do here? What brings value to their life? What brings value to the organization? Those were easy conversations. When I became a supervisor, like on night shift, I was just a corporal, brand new corporal on the night shift. My squad filled up before any other squads. I mean, people came to my squad because they knew that, one, I don't tolerate laziness, cowardice, or liars. Period. If you're any of those things, you will not survive me. And I will tell you to your face, I'm fine with having hard conversations because I understand those hard conversations, if they're done constructively, could add value to your life and certainly add value to the organization. Yeah. So, like I'm sure you've been around people like, yeah, man, I keep getting passed over for promotion and I keep getting this reason or that reason. Why don't you just sit down and like, hey, bro, the reason you're not getting promoted is because that one person there thinks you're an asshole. Change this one little thing, convince them you're not an asshole. Next thing you know, you're promoted.
Yeah.
How hard is that conversation? It takes more character to have that hard conversation, and it adds more value to your life because I've told you what the problem is.
But so if you guys are willing to have it, it's amazing, man.
That's exactly
amazing. In that profession, you would think guys would have no problem stepping up to the plate.
Yep.
Instead, they play this passive-aggressive bullshit.
Yeah.
Talk behind his back. Just go to him, man. My thing was always, I want people to come to me because if there's a problem, I want to know where I stand.
Absolutely.
And I always did the same.
Absolutely.
If I had a problem, I'm coming to you, man to man.
Yeah, because if I want to know, if I respect you and I've done something that upset you, I want to know that so I can make amends. I want to clear that.
Yeah.
If you're going to talk behind my back like a middle schooler, bro, that's your character. It's not mine. What you think about me is none of my business. But yeah, I was aggressive. I was always for the troops, always mind on the organizational goal. But, if a troop came to me and said, hey, I need the night off because my kid this or that, take it off. Yeah, but we're going to be short. Fine, I'll take your calls. Whatever. I knew that with my personnel and my zone partners that my goal was to make them whole at the end of the shift and the end of their career. At that time, I knew that I was having problems. I knew, and I suffered in silence for the better part of 17 years.
Really?
Sleeplessness, nightmares, PTS, and of course, all these things we're not talking about. I don't know what it is. Diagnosed with low T at 32. Seriously?
Yeah.
32 years old. I just came off active duty, for God's sakes. How is this possible? All of the things that I didn't have an answer to until much, much later. Until after the wheels had come off. So I knew it was something. I just didn't know what it was. I thought it was the cost of doing business, and I just kept driving.
Yep.
And yeah, man, I think I was well respected by the people that I worked for. And by that, I mean subordinate in rank. Because let's be clear, they didn't work for me. I worked for them. It was my job to to use my influence, my positional authority, and my knowledge and skills to make their lives better. Period. I was their employee. I was there to serve them.
Yeah, it's
That's how
great,
I've
man.
always
Great
looked at it.
attitude. I'll tell you, I always wanted to do two things in my career. One was to have, when you asked anyone I work with if they were in a deadly situation or a serious, serious situation, shit was hitting a fan, who do you want next to you? And I always wanted my name coming out of their
Mm-hmm.
mouths. And when you ask my bosses who you want working for you, I always wanted my bosses to utter my name. And you know, I think I achieved that in my career. And I think I was well respected by the guys I work with. They knew I would have
Mm-hmm.
killed, died for them. And I was the furthest thing from laziness and cowardice. Two things I couldn't put up with, man. And I remember one time we had a guy, there's two guys getting in a roll around. He's in another car, in the car, watching them get in a fight. And the perps, there was additional perps who were actually knocking on his door, on his window to get out of the car. You pussy, get out of the car. He sat in the car while these guys went at it. And when this got around the precinct, guys started writing stuff in his folder and putting it in there. This dude had the balls to go to the lieutenant. Lieutenant pulled guys into the office who we thought did that. Oh, it was a different squad. And I'm getting this secondhand knowledge. And I'm talking to my PBA trustee. We have delegates, and then we have like the head of the PBA in each precinct. And I told him if I was in that situation, I would go to internal affairs, and I personally would file a cowardice complaint against him. He's like, bro, I can't do that. You ruined his career. I'm like, brother, let's get this straight. I'm trying to get him fired and nothing less.
Yeah.
For me to talk about going to internal affairs, I was not an internal affairs guy. It should speak volumes. I'm like, you're telling me that dude is not willing to die for his men? Why is he here? You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you're not willing to pay the ultimate price, man, it's not a job for you.
Yeah.
Fireman, cop, soldier. If you're not willing to die, why are you here, man? You know, because that potential is there every day of your life. And I will lay down my life gladly for someone I work with, man. I'd rather die here than die here and live a coward.
Well, on the treadmill this morning when I was listening to your first episode, I actually laughed out loud when you said, if I ever go out, I want to make sure before I die that I know that I was the one that killed the bad guy that tried to take me out. And I laughed out loud. I was like, yeah, man. I said, take me. I just want to watch the light go out in that fucker's eyes, because when we get to the escalator, I'm going up. I get to watch him go down.
Exactly. I told God, I
Who's
was in
the
the mirror.
bitch
I'm
now?
like, God, yeah, exactly, motherfucker.
Yeah.
May taking me, but I got
No,
you.
I'm with you, man. It's so funny, and I think it was Erin actually on her podcast that asked me if what other people would say about me, and I said, that's arrogant for me to answer that, but I would think I'd allow them to say that. But I've had enough comments. I mean, at my retirement, my little cake party at the district on my last day, my kids were sitting there, and they were like, their eyes like, oh my God, who is my father? And I mean,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
were telling stories, and I was like, hey, before you tell any more stories, I used to black out a lot, because it sounds like some shit I would have said, but I don't remember that. And everybody in the room's like, yeah, that's exactly how it went down. And when I was shaved head Doug, people around the office referred to it as old Doug versus new Doug. And some people would say, hey, man, maybe new Doug should pop in for just a little bit. And, it's just funny because things like things were actually made up about me. One of my recruits would tell people, that's Doug White, motherfucker. Didn't you get the memo? And they actually wrote a memo to the former sheriff. I mean, on the stationery and everything. And the message said, that's Doug White, motherfucker. And they passed it around. It was the joke. And,
That's great.
So yeah, I think I think I left a legacy, and I knew that when I retired, when I started, I never thought about rank or anything like that. I just wanted to do the job. That was it. Rank came later, and it came with the benefit of doing good work and being consistent, and always being there. But for me, the legacy left behind and what I wanted to do as a field trainer, I came up with this actually because as an FTO, I knew that being an FTO, you're the touch point, even more so than the sergeant or the corporal, or especially the lieutenant. You have an opportunity to shape the future of your organization by the impact that you have on that recruit. Everything that you say and do, they're going to remember. It's in the animal kingdom, they call it imprinting. If they see, the mother chicken, if I'm scratching at the ground and pecking my head in the ground, the babies are going to do that. So they take on your mannerisms. They take on the things you say. If you badmouth the organization and the profession, that's going to feed into them. That's a cancer, man.
Yep.
So you have the obligation and the privilege, more than anything else, to shape the organization in the way that you think is going to be beneficial to them, their career, the organization, the profession. Teaching things like moral courage, making the right decisions even though it's not the popular thing, saying what you mean, meaning it, and doing it, leading by action and by your own setting the standard that you meet yourself, doing those things, and of course imparting the job, all the things that go along with it, officer safety, character, all of those things go into it. But my goal for being a field trainer and for my career is that when I left, I wanted to be able to look out in the roll call room and see a legion of shaved head lunatics that did work the way that I did it.
Yeah.
And as I became a boss, I'd start reading reports. And I taught the FTO program at our office for like 7.5 years. I rewrote the whole program, and I was the sole instructor, and actually became the regional instructor here at Hillsborough Community College for 3 or 4 years. So I knew that like 95% of the regional FTOs had been touched by me. So I
Yep.
knew what they were teaching. And it was so great when I would get reports as a boss and, criminal report affidavits and would get the incident reports. I'm reading it and it's like, man, who wrote this report? It sounds like I wrote it. Then I look at the name at the bottom. I'm like, that person was trained by that person who was trained by this person who was trained by me. So, I've got 3 or 4 generations of my words and my work.
The Doug White template.
That was it, man. My recruits remembered my order at Starbucks. I got out of the car
That's
one
hilarious.
night on night shift, and one of the deputies walked out. He was on street crimes at the time, and he goes, "Hey, sir, is that a venti non-fat no whip cinnamon dolce latte?" I know. It sounds like the worst drink for a bruiser to drink.
You
But
drink that with your pinky up?
no, I drink it in one big gulp, hot. But no, it tastes good, man. Don't be mad at me.
I'm sure
for
it
that.
does.
But I was like, bro, how do you remember that? And he says, all your rookies remember it. That's how you start your shift. And one of the guys that he worked with in street crimes came out the door, and he looked at me and said, "Hey, Mark, what's he drinking?" He goes, "Oh, man, that's the venti non-fat no whip cinnamon dolce latte."
That's hilarious,
So,
man.
these kids are paying attention to you. So if there's any active
Yeah.
FTOs out there, and just like your kids, if you're a mom or a dad, your kids are watching. They're going to do what you do. If you come in looking like shit or you're all assed up talking bad about your workmates or something, you're either going to do one thing. You're going to turn them into you, or you're going to turn them against you.
Yeah.
So that's a tough deal, man. It's a lot of responsibility.
No, it is. I was actually asked for years by my lieutenant to become an FTO. And I guess selfishly, man, I turned him down. I liked my time alone. Some of these kids, as you know, are tough to have in the corporate hours or whatever your tours were.
Yeah.
And we got this one particular kid that he had made an FTO because no one else was kind of volunteering. And I saw that and I'm like, there's no way this kid should have
Bro,
any
that's
input
the
on training
worst.
people. Went right in his office. I'm like, hello, I go to FTO school. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, we can't have such and such training, guys. This is not right. And yeah, it went well. I mean, it was only 1 or 2 that were tough cases, but for the most part, I would get over and over like, Morgs, you were the best FTO I had. And, it wasn't that I was anything great. I just brought a ton of experience,
Yeah.
especially policing in inner city Atlanta for 10 years that we never saw in Suffolk County. Like, I went as a recruit in Suffolk County, I'm getting field trained, and there was no one that come close to me with experience, but I was still one mouth to 2 ears,
Yeah.
humble as could be.
Yeah.
Um, but, in my head, I'm like, you guys have no fucking, like, I would see someone and the way they were, the mannerisms and, tactically, you try to point it out subtly, but you're like, what the fuck are you doing, man? You get killed like this. So I'm glad I learned where I learned because it was one of the most violent cities in America, and I was able to bring, that experience to these guys. So, I'll forever be grateful that I ended up doing that
Yeah.
because you can't put a price on passing on knowledge.
No, you can't.
You should be paying it forward.
Yeah, and that knowledge changes as you mature in the profession and mature in age. Man, a lot of things change. You have a
Yeah,
whole different perspective on things. And when you have kids, your perspective changes
absolutely.
again. I mean, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Well, they say
life.
your whole personality changes every 7 years anyway, but I know we're talking about this professional
Yeah.
wise, but yeah, it's the truth. So, all right, so now let's kind of get into. So during the course of your career, you kind of getting feelings of, these PTS symptoms kind of creeping in?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would find myself getting emotional on my days off, depression, looking for the next thing. I would get bored very quickly. So a lot of people go shopping and buy pretty things. I needed to collect achievements. I needed to go to the next class. I needed to be the guy in the bomb suit on this bomb call. I needed a new project. I always needed something to prove that I was still worthy of being
Right.
where I was. And again, overcommitted. I took on everything, even things that I wasn't comfortable doing or didn't know anything about. And I know this sounds arrogant, but I crushed everything I touched. I was winning at everything until I couldn't win anymore. So I knew that something was going on, and I kind of turned it. I turned it a little bit when I was a young corporal. I would have conversations with my squads at squad meetings or roll calls and say, the old phrase, "It's okay not to be okay." And this is going back to like 2013. It's okay not to be okay. If you have a problem, everybody has this stuff. If you go to this call or this type of call, come talk to me. There's help out there. And I did that for years and years and years and years. And did it as a sergeant, as an acting sergeant, as a lieutenant. I would have long conversations with now my entire platoon saying, hey, it's okay not to be okay. You're not supposed to be okay. If you have a problem, come speak to me. Well, when I became vocal about my issues, and I'm not going to talk about, I will talk about my break that became my breakthrough, but I'm not going to talk about the career stuff that went into that because it gets long and convoluted story. And it's in the book, it's in my podcast. It can be found out there. The story's out there.
Okay.
But when I had my breaking point and I became vocal about the things that I'd experienced and how long I'd been experiencing and what I was going through and what I was doing to fix myself and to fix me for me and for my family, not necessarily the profession. I had a guy that worked for me. He and I were zone partners. We were field trainers, friends. He was my corporal when I was his sergeant, and so on. We followed each other through our careers.
Yeah.
And after my fall from grace, he called me and he said, hey, bro, all those years that you were having these conversations, it's okay not to be okay. He said, were you just asking for permission? Were you waiting for somebody else to say, I have a problem so you can have one? And I laughed and I was like, Jeremy, nobody else has ever called me on my bullshit. So that's exactly what I was doing. I hoped and prayed every time somebody said something that they would come to me so I could unload, to know that I wasn't alone. And yeah, man, I was putting it out there to be the rock for everybody else, but not taking care of
Yep.
myself.
Is that amazing, man, the way we do that?
It is. And I think for a couple of reasons. One, we serve others and we want to help
Yeah.
others, not necessarily ourselves. We forsake ourselves, at our own peril because we want to help other people. But I also think that if you're in the picture, you can't see the picture. So, I mean, I'm living this thing. I know that there's something that's off, but I just figure, it's seasonal affective disorder. I have some depression, because it's Christmas time. But wait a second, it's July.
Yeah.
I don't have the Christmas blues. I've got summer blues. I get bored with something, so I've got to look for something else. And that something else was never my family. Like I said, man, everything was for rented admiration because the day you retire, that's all it is. That shirt, all of your accolades and everything, it stays on the inside of the door. You don't have access to that anymore. Nobody gives a shit that you were a cop a week ago. It's like going to a cop funeral. You'll never see anything bigger than a cop funeral, but who's there for the family the day after?
Yeah, exactly.
Not the organization,
Hell
not the
no.
bugler, not the pallbearers, maybe one or two close friends who may not even work for the organization. Who's left to handle all the wreckage of that? Your family. With that one example, it should tell you who is the most important or who should be the most important person in a first responder's or military personnel or veteran's life. It's the family.
Yeah.
My book, it starts off the first sentence. It is my belief, and I'm not alone in this belief, that the spouses of first responders and military personnel are the brave and the bold. That's it. I believe that 100%. And I believe, there's a lot of conversations about culturally competent counselors. Go to somebody who knows the cop or the firefighter world, and you can talk to them because they're culturally competent. Well, Mike, I put it to you, man. July 8th will be the 25th wedding anniversary for my wife, Michelle, and I. 25 years. She was with me for all 25 of my sheriff's office years and 9 of my military years. Bomb teams, call outs. And I've left dinners. I left my niece's christening for a bomb call because I want to be the number one. Yeah, buddy, the job was always first. But I will tell you this, that the people who love us most are actively looking for ways to help us.
Yeah.
There is no one on this planet who has earned the right to be that person to help us. And I will tell you now that my culturally competent counselor held my hand and stood 6 inches away at an altar almost 25 years ago. And I will say this, if not for my wife, for all of the wonderful things that she has done in her life, she was put on this planet to be there for me the day I came home of my break. Were it not for her, you and I don't have this conversation. Hiding in plain sight is dead at page 125. Tell the story is never a story that's told. It blends in with all of the other stories, the hundreds of years. So I am fully 100% grateful to my wife, her dedication to us, her strength and faith, her being unafraid to help me. So we need to be talking about the spouses because that's...
The toll it takes on them, man. We bring it all home and heap it on them. And
they're
we
the
don't
ones
even
we come
realize
home to. They are our guiding star, our guiding principle. It is everything that I base. If I make this decision, what is my wife going to think about me? Am I the man that she married? That's the first level after moral obligations of decisions. That's the first filter. Any decision I make hits. And then, am I the man my children think I am if I make this decision? Or if I say this or I do this? She was the reason I came home that night and every night. They deserve the right for us to be vulnerable and communicate with them. They should have first crack at saving us.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I was a little an aside there.
No, not at all. Guys need to hear that. Because I don't think that we give it enough credence that it deserves in the fact that we bring this stuff home and they're with us every step of the way, whether or not we're acknowledging it, realizing it.
Yeah.
And, I can't imagine trying to help, like you, I was trying to figure out after retirement what I was going through. I was aware something was not right. I just wasn't sure the origination of those feelings until I watched that Sean Ryan video. And my wife the whole time was talking to me, trying to kind of coax me out of the shell, trying to see what was going on. And it's weird. It wasn't like I was hiding from her. I really, if I could do it again, I'm not sure if I could have explained it, to be honest with you. I just wasn't sure myself until it was crystal clear watching Eddie and crying and realizing, like, bam, 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 all these calls. Like, that's what it is, man. That's what happens. Depression, this anger. Just wasn't feeling myself. And, it's tough. Like, how do you explain to anyone else? You're not even sure what the hell's going on yourself.
Dude, that's the biggest thing. When I started healing, like I said, man, I started this thing like 5 years ago, trying to sort myself and figure it all out. And I didn't have the answers. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't tell you how to help me because I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until on the Jocko podcast, I heard Dr. Kirk Parsley, the sleep doctor. He was former SEAL. He was a team doc and all this other stuff. And he was talking about sleep and what he called SEAL syndrome. And there was a paper done by Dr. Chris Free called Operator Syndrome, and he since did a book. It was March of 24 that the book came out. But I heard this episode with Doc Parsley and Jocko, and then I looked up the study online and read the study, and it talked about the allostatic load that operators are on, the operational tempo, the stresses on the body, always having to perform, the traumas of being in shootouts, sleeplessness, hormone imbalance, all of these things. I was like, well, I'm not an operator, so even though I have all those things, this can't mean me. So then I listened more and more, but now I had a starting point. Because of that paper, I had a starting point, started getting my blood work done. They say 800 to 900 is optimum for a male in their 40s for testosterone. Mine
Yep.
went 168.
Wow.
My doctor was like, "How are you walking around?" Sleep apnea. My sleep study lasted 2 hours and 38 minutes, and that was a good night of sleep for me.
Damn.
The doctor's like, "Bro, what is wrong with you?" Now on the
I have
outside,
both of those too. Low T, sleep
oh yeah,
apnea, same thing.
yeah,
I'm on the
and
machine.
they're like, "Okay, it's because you're obese." Okay, well I'm 6'1", 220 pounds. My BMI says 33, obese. But right now, cold, I can go out and do a sprint triathlon and take the podium, like I did the previous weekend before my blood work.
Yeah,
So tell me how I'm obese and out of shape.
exactly. That BMI is garbage to some
Yeah, no,
folks.
that's so
I'm 6 foot
stupid.
235. I'm further bigger than obese,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no, I think that's hysterical that
yeah,
people say that. But I had all the problems, and I'm like, wait a second. Now that I know that there's this thing, there's a framework of a syndrome, and these things are all interconnected with each other. You're going to have low T if you're not sleeping. If you're not sleeping, you're going to have cognitive decline. You're going to have depression. You're going to have anxiety. You add in the allostatic load of all the trauma that we've received, in addition to just being human beings trying to run a family and
yeah,
survive in this world, brother, you're just putting black powder on top of black powder and waiting for a match. And that's where I got my starting point and really started diving in. Basically, March of last year, my book, I sat down and started journaling after I retired because, like you, man, I got dark. I mean, real dark. There was a point, like you, for 30 years, you're this thing for 30
yep,
years. It's your identity. It's all you are. It's your brand. And you wake up the next day and you're none of those things anymore. Was this what you were meant to be? Was this your path? Was this your purpose? Who am I now? What am I going to be when I grow up? It was all for shit because nobody cares about my stories anymore.
no,
So, you meet some young officer like, hey, yeah, who's your sergeant? They don't give a fuck who you are. You're just some dude
exactly.
keeping them from going to chow. They don't care. So, again, rented admiration. So, trying to figure all of that stuff out, I started journaling. And I sat down and I found it was pouring out of me, man, stuff that I had never considered as an issue. And over the course of months, and I had to pull back several times because I got even darker to a point where I had devalued my own existence to my pension check.
Really?
Yeah, because if I'm on the other side of dirt, my family doesn't get the money. So I got to keep living just so they can get paid and have nice shoes and, have a vacation.
Yeah,
That's it. They don't need me. I'm a burden. The only thing I contribute is a pension check. You're a bag of shit. And I was right back to where I was. But the thing different this time is I was actually addressing the things. I was sitting with the things that I had done wrong, the things I could have done better, my trauma. I started owning every bit of it. I started atoning for it. And I found that when I truly faced the things that I didn't want to tell myself or anyone else, and I owned it and I apologized for it and learned from those things, you guys talked about it, the resilience. That resilience is great, but growth is better, man. And you can't grow it like going to the gym. You can't walk into a gym and say, bench press. I'm strong and leave. You got to lift the weight, man. You got to do the work. You got to break your shit. You got to throw up on the floor because if you ever want to hit 3 wheels on each side, you're going to have to break some shit to do it.
Yep.
That's what it is. I tell my son, 225 is the new 135. Let's go. Push. Like
growth comes failure. It's the only way it happens.
Exactly. And having been through it, you have got to strip down. I'm not going to say that you have to be in a dark parking lot with a pistol in your hand like me to be in that place. I'm hoping that you take measures in hand before you get to that place. That's
Right.
what my platform is about. That's what I want. That's what I'm doing when I'm doing. I don't care if I ever make a penny. I want to do what I can to make sure somebody's not sitting in that parking lot.
Same.
And having been there, I know where I was. I know where I am now. And man, I got to tell you, once you figure it out, once you own your shit, brother, the world is a better place. Food tastes better. Your wife's hugs are better. Your kids' smiles mean something. Dude, we deserve to be living better than we live.
Yeah.
We are not what we've been told. We're more than that. And resilience suggests that you have to go back to a normal state, to where you once were, to be able to bounce back. I don't think we get to go back. I don't think we're meant to. You and I, we don't get to be normal. We don't get to go to church socials and sit there and smile and go to fish fries. We know too much. We're
Be
supposed
forever
to.
changed.
You are.
Yeah.
You are. And I think it's our obligation with, like I said earlier, it's our obligation having that experience and having this maturity and growth to be able to show it to others.
Yeah.
And if we're not, it's selfish. My story means nothing to me. Nobody gives a shit unless it can help someone. And it does no good sitting inside me. So being able to come on the Resilient Warrior podcast and hang out with you, man, this is a big deal for me, man, because I know you've got the width and the reach, and just to be able to share some time with you, man, this is a big honor for me. So I really appreciate your time. I really do.
Absolutely, bro. It's an honor having you on. And
Thank
there's
you.
so many guys like us out there who are going through it right now, who, again, this is why I started, man. They're going to watch and they're going to hear your story and be like, man, Doug is talking about exactly what I'm going through, man. So in terms of what do you tell, say your son decided today want to, get into law enforcement, or you're talking to young officers these days, what are you telling these guys as they're going on in their career to process the traumas that they are seeing? Because I think that's a huge thing, and no one's talking about that. Like, how are these young guys healthily, in healthy ways, supposed to process this so that they don't fall into the things that we've gone through?
Oh, brother, I am so glad you asked that question.
Do
So
tell.
I would like to say that it starts with leadership. However, leadership and the profession, the first responder disciplines, for the most part, are held by people in positional authority with no moral courage to do the right thing. Either they don't believe it's a priority, or, hey, there's no money for it. No, there's money for it. You waste money on stupid shit all day.
Yeah.
It's not a priority for you. I'm not even going to go down the leadership thing. I think that can only be controlled with legislation. You have to force these people who are less than to do the job that they are trusted to do or have been entrusted to do. So until that happens, the troops need to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
With that, I feel, and this is actually Representative Danny Alvarez out of Hillsborough County. He read my book. He called me and said, I want 120 copies for every member of the Florida House of Representatives. They need this story in their hand. 2 weeks ago, I went up there and hand-delivered them to some of the reps. It was fantastic. Met the commissioner and the deputy commissioner of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Representative Alvarez and some of his people are pushing to have it codified into statute that each academy class, FDLE, in the basic recruit academy classes, will be giving 4.5-hour block of instruction on PTS and self-care and resilience. And I'm like, bro, it's 4.5 hours more than we've ever seen, because those conversations aren't being had.
Yep.
So my thing first is I would tell the young troops, you are not alone. You're not that damn special. Don't think you are. Trauma is relative to the person receiving it. If you had a bad childhood, even a good childhood, everybody comes to the door as a first responder or the military service with their own bag of shit.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on how big their rucksack is and how many rocks they're already carrying. So for me to say that you and I go to the same call, you and I have 2 homicides our first night out, I'm good to go. Or I'm not good to go and you're good to go. Well, what's the difference? We were on the same call. Yeah, it doesn't matter. There's no requisite number of calls or traumas that you have to rack up before you can say you have a problem. The barrier to entry is raising your hand and saying, I have a problem. If you don't have a problem with it, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
That's a bigger issue that needs to be addressed. But taking care of yourself, understanding that sleep, nutrition, fitness, mindset, gratitude, these things are all very, very important. I think as important as those things are, when somebody tells you in the first responder world, we're a family, just smile and wave and keep walking. Because if we were a family, I'd be having family dinners with old workmates. Instead, I get a call from 1 or 2 of them every few months.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a family. We were coworkers at best. Okay? So when I went on active duty for those 3 years and I was actually on the road deployed, you know who came and mowed my grass? My zone partner, who's in my book and who I still have lunch with every 2 weeks. He came to mow my grass because I wasn't home.
Yeah.
So no, you're not a family, dude. This is a job, and this job will end. All of this admiration, all of these accolades are rented. It stays at the door when you leave. Don't be mad. It's not personal. This is
No.
business. Law enforcement has to continue doing the job of law enforcement. When you step off the train, it ain't up coming back to the station, so understand that.
No.
So as you go through your career, make sure that you're whole. Invest in yourself, invest in your family first and foremost. Again, this is a job. Invest wisely. So when the day comes where you're like, hey, bro, I got a problem, and the office says, we don't know you, you don't have to have fuck you money, but you have enough to say, hey, fuck you. You can
Yep.
do anything. Bro, if you were a cop for a year, anywhere, you were capable of being decisive, hopefully emotionally intelligent, being able to see things for what they are, being able to call bullshit when you see it. The only difference between you and a businessman is learning some business terminology. Just learn the way they speak. If you were a good cop, a good firefighter, a good dispatcher, or a good soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine, you can be good in business. I think Eddie Penny has proven that. Sean Ryan has proven that. Mike Sorelli has proven that. I mean, bro, Jocko, the list goes on.
Oh, yeah.
My business
Just reinventing
heroes.
themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Using the stuff that they already knew. They're not coming up with new shit.
Yep.
So you can do more than what they're leading you to believe. That's my assignment. I'm only good in patrol. No, don't believe that garbage. So you are better. You are meant for more than, and you have to do what you need to do to make sure that you're whole at the end of your career for your family. Yeah. And that would be my short answer, which was not a short answer.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah,
advice.
it's
to
great
them.
advice, though.
It is. Pay attention to
Great
yourself, man,
advice.
because nobody's coming to save you.
Yep. Say it over and over. You raise your hand, and there are plenty of people that will, but there's no one coming to your house, throwing you over the shoulder and taking you out of there.
No,
No one. It's
there's
never going
not.
to happen.
They're not. When I became vocal about what I was going through and what I was doing to fix myself, the troops responded to me. Before I even said anything, I started getting help, and my demeanor changed so much that within 2 weeks, 7 deputies had come to my office to sit down and talk with me. 5 of those deputies didn't even work for me.
Really?
You know what that takes for a deputy who's in a position like that to come talk to a lieutenant that's not their lieutenant? That's a big thing, buddy.
Hell yeah.
And that's a hell of a responsibility. But when I became vocal, I was discounted, discredited, disavowed, and finally dismissed by the bosses who did not show up for my retirement party, who have not called me since, didn't even call me the day I retired after 25 years of service. And I made an impact. I know I did. So yeah, man, it's all in the book.
It's amazing. Yeah, guys who go into this profession need to know you are a number, and when you leave, that door is it's going to hit you in the ass on the way out, and they don't care. And as far as leadership, man, I can't even imagine counting the amount of snakes that I've met in leadership positions. It's just unbelievable. It's like the biggest snakes take tests to get promoted to go up the street as quickly as possible because they want that power over guys and girls. And instead of increasing their quality of life, making it better, they do their best to do the opposite. It's just incredible to see sometimes.
Yeah, when you get into a leadership position, your job, your sole focus, and I understand you have to do the business of law enforcement, budgets, and all that other stuff. But when it comes to your personnel, no, bro, your job, the only thing that you should focus on is using your positional authority and your influence, your knowledge, to make the lives of the people that depend on you better.
Mm-hmm.
Period. That's it. That is it, man. Oh, we're going to get everybody new cars. You'll love me for that. I don't need a new car.
Yeah.
I need that $60,000 for a new car to be put into the salary of an officer because we're supposed to have 12 on my squad and we have 4.
Yep.
I can't take vacation because we're 400 bodies short. But the staff who don't even ride patrol all have freaking Hemis. Why is that? We don't even pursue. Why does that guy get a Hemi or a Scat Pack or a whatever the hell the latest big engine is? We're 400 bodies short, but we have pretty labels on top of our laptops so that everybody can see who the sheriff is in our car when we pull over. These are all true stories too, bro, by the way.
Oh, yeah. And
I mean,
trust me, I believe him. I've seen it.
what's the purpose of that? Oh, we gave you raises. I don't need raises. I need time home with my family. Oh,
Yeah,
we took the cap off of overtime. Yay! So I can work more.
exactly.
It's not what
That's
I
what I
need,
want.
man. It's not
Yeah,
what I need. And they don't get it because it's what they value. It's not time
exactly.
with my kids. It's not time with my family. It's not making me whole. But
It's the truth. And for you young guys, you need to, it's coming upon you to take what you need because they're not going to give it to you. And, you know, you can have the greatest stats month after month. I tell guys, you could be the king of the hill, man. You fuck up once, they will bury you. And they ain't giving you that shovel to dig yourself out, man. It
uh-uh.
doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be anything crazy big,
Bro,
you
they've
know?
already got the hole for you. And it wasn't even
Yeah,
for you. It's just a hole they got sitting around.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like
Someone's going in it.
we used to have a boss who would say, you're only as good as the last time you fucked up. I'm like,
Yeah,
wow, bro.
exactly.
Wow, there's no grace here. No
Yep.
grace whatsoever. So if I led my squad across the board for 13 months, the month I didn't do it, what's going on, man? Why are you slacking off? You're a bag of shit. What have you done for me today?
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, what is that? What is that?
Give them more. That's exactly what they expect.
That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I valued my organization. I loved it. I was a part of it. And I valued my career. I loved what I did, and I would do it again tomorrow from a position of experience.
Yeah.
However, the first responder disciplines will wring you out like a wet paper towel and put you to the side.
Yep.
That's it. Because it's a machine, man. You can get
It
on
is.
and enjoy the ride, or they will use your guts to grind to grease the gears. They
Yep.
don't give a shit. The machine has to keep moving, and it'll
Exactly.
chew you up as soon as it will have you contribute. It's just
Yep. Literally.
the nature of it. And it's sad that there are leaders, people in positions of leadership that are less than, and allow that to happen.
Yeah.
But it's the way
It'll
that it
continue to
is.
do so, unfortunately. Exactly. So, Doug, listen, it's been fantastic
Yes.
speaking to you. Please tell the audience how they can get your book, how to get in touch with you, social medias, anything. All the links to be in the bio.
My website is going to get better, and it's mostly functional. It's dougwhiteofficial.com. But you can hear my podcasts on all the streaming platforms that tell the story. You can find me at Doug White on LinkedIn, wherever it is you find me. Oh, and also Instagram at tell_this_story. Wherever it is you find me, send me a message. Talk to me. Find out. I love connecting with people. I think that's more important than book sales or anything else. It's just
Yep.
authentically connecting with people, just to find out where everybody's at and what I could do to help them. As far as the book, the big driver, you can get it anywhere online, but Amazon is the big driver, and it's
Okay.
Hiding in Plain Sight: The Truth About Trauma Service and the Way Forward by Doug White. So
Nice.
I just want to hear from people and contribute where I can, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely, brother. It was great speaking to you, and you're doing a fantastic job. And, frankly, we need more guys like you doing work like this because it is unfortunately needed everywhere.
So I appreciate you, Mike.
Absolutely, Doug. All right. Thanks again. We will talk to you soon.
All right, buddy.